Great rewards don't wait, so why should you? Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all of your Invigor hybrid canola by November 14th. Talk to your retailer. Terms and conditions apply.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Sean Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. And today is brought to you by DEKALB. You know, with your canola in the bin, it's time to lock up those savings for next year's season. Like 2026 is it's right around the corner. Act now and save up to $75 per bag on your DEKALB canola with harvest rewards, but only until October 31st. Visit DEKALBrewards.ca for details. That's DEKALBrewards.ca. And we got Timothy Darragh will be on the show here today to talk about some of the things that are going on at DEKALB. We got Tommy Grisafi of Ag Bull Media and Ag Bull Trading will be with us to talk about the markets. Representative Eric Sorensen, he's in the 17th District of Illinois, member of Congress. He's going to talk about the impact of the government shutdown on ag, as well as what's up. What does he think is going to happen with these trade negotiations at the back end of the week? Actually, I think the meeting is tomorrow between President Xi and President Trump on U.S.-China trade relations, as we did see 3 ships of soybeans get booked by China. And what does that mean for the market? So we'll get the policy and the market perspective on that. And we'll also be joined today by Dr. John Cranfield. He's the Dean of the Ontario Ag College at the University of Guelph to talk about a new bursary. It is the Tom and Jane Funk Agri-Marketing Bursary. Exciting stuff because we know the Funk family well here at Real Agriculture, and looking forward to getting the details on that and how you can participate. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Let's take a break. When we come back, Tommy Grisafi standing by.
I'm Lindsay Smith, and joining me now for this product spotlight, it's Tyler Gullen, Technical Services Manager with New Farm.
We just received registration for a new soil active herbicide, Valterra cereals. Really nice option that growers can spray in the fall just before freeze up, or else in the spring once that snow melts too. I think to me there's 3 main benefits to those soil actives. Firstly, you get that residual weed control. You can catch that first flush of weeds in the spring, kill them off before you go and seed, and that can lead to cleaner fields, getting that crop off to a great start, and really keep more of that moisture and nutrients available to that crop. The second benefit is as a resistant management tool. It's kind of your one shot in the year to mix up that routine that those weeds like and really get ahead of those weeds and that resistance. The third reason is just full flexibility, and you can apply these in the fall once harvest is wrapped up and things slow down on the farm a little bit. So you don't have to drag that sprayer out as early that crazy spring seeding season. You don't really have to rush back out as if you would if you didn't have those residuals. You can visit our website at newfarm.ca. Definitely if you're kind of for Agri-Trade November 5th to 7th, come chat with us at that booth. It's 418 in the Prairie Pavilion.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture. And welcome back to Real Ag Radio, brought to you today by DEKALB. Let's talk markets. We're joined right now by Tommy Grisafi of Ag Bull Trading and Ag Bull Media. Tommy, how are we doing?
I'm doing well. Looking at my phone, just making sure I'm not missing anything because we have an action-packed world going on, my friend. So where should we start?
Well, let's start on soybeans. We saw a report this morning that China has bought 3 cargoes of beans. It's not a lot, but some would say, hey, it's a start. But the bean market opened the day trading down. Just so everybody knows, we're recording this on Wednesday morning. The market is currently down. Why?
Because they could have bought, the way the bean market rallied from last week to this week, they could have bought 30 cargoes for that rally, and 3 is not going to get it done. They could buy 3 every day for 20 days. The truth is they have to buy some. Half is a pretty strong. There's a very much a good chance they have to buy beans from us November, December, January, just to fill that gap between now and South America. So if they say, oh, China's going to buy, 10, they used to buy 20. It's a lose. So if you know how to do the math, and there's some really smart people out here who know how to do the math, and they're like, wait, this year they bought this much. That year they bought this much.
Yeah.
Now they're going to cut a deal, and our administrations are going to come out and act like it's the biggest deal since sliced bread. And if you're smart, like that deal yesterday with Japan signed a whopper of a deal. It was less than they did the year before.
Yeah, it was $8 billion in egg commodities, and that's what they've been. That's not
right. Trump got a putter, and Rollins got a tweet. Right. It's I don't want to say fake news, but it's entertaining here. So if you're the reason I was laughing when we started recording was a dear friend of mine from Chicago, PJ Quaid. He's a big options broker. He said, well, it hit the mainstream. His mom's older. He said, my mom just called me and said China's buying soybeans. I mean, that's all America News is talking about, how Trump ruined the soybean farmer's life. The American news isn't talking about that soybeans are $1 higher than where they were a year ago. They're just saying and the truth is what's hurting farmers all across the world isn't necessarily the price of the good. It's the inputs, which you talk about on your show all the time, fertilizer and everything else. So the headlines are soybeans. The Rollins tweets or whatever, the true socials from the president are they actually get people like my parents who are 84. My father told me, I heard Trump hurt the cattlemen real bad. And I said, did the media forget to tell you that the cattlemen just had the biggest 5-year run in history? So we pulled down 5 days for wrong reasons, right? Mean true social tweets. But the truth is the cash market will take off, and you're going to hear that 240 traded in the South, and that they weren't giving their cattle away. And it's let the markets work. Yeah. It's something, I'm sure your listeners feel frustration, because I know a long time ago when you had the Canadian Wheat Board and everything else, you're old enough and your listeners are old enough to remember all those days, right?
Yep.
So don't depend on our markets. Yeah,
we don't need the government really intervening too much here, because it always seems to end up in some sort of a mess. And what's interesting about the beef one is on a couple fronts, the president claiming that, he's the reason why ranchers are making so much money right now. Not true. But at the same time, also, I'm not sure 80,000 tons of beef coming in from Argentina fixes the situation either. So there's an overreaction maybe on the producer side. This is really a situation where it didn't need to happen. I think that's the frustrating thing. And it's had an impact on the markets as they've been swinging. We're up pretty considerably today, but we've had some pretty significant down days as well.
Yeah, there's it's a horrible story and maybe a horrible analogy, but there was a concert in America, and I can't remember the band. I want to say Queensryche, but I could be wrong. But there was a fireworks, the techno show at the concert, and there was plenty of room for people to get out. But a fire burst out at a theater, and people trampled each other, and a lot of people died. One of the biggest disasters in recent American history at a theater. And it was all because they couldn't get out of the door fast enough in the panic. And that's the exact same thing, my friend, that happened to the feeder cattle market. We spent 4 or 5 years building up all this energy to let everyone in this market and have record open interest. How many times did you hear analysts come on your show and say, we have record open interest? We traded big volume in the feeder cattle. When you gap open lower and you lock limit, you create a whole nother market, which is a panic market. And when you're locked limit, you no longer allow in America LRP to trade, which is the insurance product that the government issues. They need the futures and options market for that product to work well. So then we have extended limits. Well, we open for a few minutes and we lock limit again, especially in the back months. We had aggressive selling in the front months, but the back months, we're trading way lower. Now, what maybe your viewers and listeners don't realize is when we were limit down the other day, we were really another $12 lower in feeder cattle. There were trades you could do. So if you sold at limit down, there were things you could do in the options market to actually buy it $10 lower than that. That's what type of pain and panic happened. And the analogy of the theater and that concert, 20 years ago, it's happened several times here in America where there's a concert, something happens, and people can't get out. And so the function of the market is to have buyers and sellers, speculators and hedgers. When that system freezes up and they don't let you out, kind of like I remember on 9/11 here in America, another bad event. After this, we got to talk happy stories. But I couldn't get out of some positions I had because the markets were closed. And it's a very poor feeling. That's why knuckleheads like me and other people are always saying, hey, if you're going to be long cash cattle or you're going to be long futures, don't be afraid to throw some puts under there and buy that insurance. Don't be afraid to buy insurance. We pretend we're commodities brokers, Sean. We're really insurance salesmen.
Yeah.
We're always asking you to be insurance people. And we're acting like we're traders. I mean, I actually trade. I'm very involved in this cattle market. Some days are really good. Some days aren't. But in general, we're selling insurance. We're asking people to buy the insurance, buy the crop insurance, buy the LRP, buy the put. And these puts help people a lot, but not as much as just a good sale or something else,
Well, and the reality is that the consumer has been saying it does feel a little bit unbelievable, but the data is there. The consumer has been saying, I know prices are high, but I still have a taste for beef. I'm willing to pay these prices, and so it's really a poor situation for producers who are trying to risk manage and trying to steer through this. Like, what do they do right now? If you're running a feed yard, what do you do right now from a hedging perspective?
That's a great question. Before this all happened, we should have. You got to have your banker on board, right? So where do you get the money? Well, people have money on their own, but then they have lines of credit from bankers, and you have to have your banker on board. You can't run 1,000 head of cattle, say I may need a few $100,000, and then find out you need 400, 600, 800 margin. And I don't know how to say this nicely, but for some reason, in the banker's mind, when you're sending in margin money, they look at those as losses. And there's always some banker who will go tell a farmer or rancher, I work with plenty of guys who aren't sending in money like you. Then that rancher then lifts those hedges and says, I'm just going to, and they're cowboys, right? You know what a cowboy looks like. These boys and girls take a lot of risk. So they start taking more risk and as the market keeps going up, they get lulled into being comfortable. So what do you tell someone? That bad decisions made during good times will come back to haunt you when things change. No different than the arrogance and the cavalier attitude of American farmers and farmers around the world when the price of grains exploded during the Ukraine war, especially the stuff I'm familiar with in North Dakota, your edible beans, your sunflower seeds, any oil from canola. Canola went nuts. And the lake houses were being bought, and they were fighting over who could buy the biggest engine in the boat. Now all of a sudden, the same farmers are having a hard time getting operating. Those were bad decisions made during good times. So if you make bad decisions during good times, when a bad time happens, and definitely that True Social post was not a highlight of American history in ranching. Now, there's more background on why maybe the president did that, and I don't think we want to go into that inside baseball. But I will say this, is that someone might have hurt his feelings and disrespected him, and that was a signal to the cattle industry and different people. Now, if you think the cattle industry is scared, you should see the memes coming out of the hog industry, where the hog industry posts those things on the internet saying, just please don't tweet about us. Please, we're doing okay. We promise we'll behave. We'll stay in the White House for the full meeting.
Yeah, hogs are hiding in the corner. So
they are.
If you look at the grain market and you look at corn right now, of course, we've had quite a wild ride through this year when it comes to yield expectations and the surprise to the upside when it comes to the acre. What are you telling clients right now when it comes to the corn market?
Well, a lot of my clients are up north in North Dakota, and we're going to focus on the basis. They're not done harvesting corn. Folks have done what they need to do in beans. They either could store them or couldn't store them. They either paid for storage, bought futures, bought options. Now moving to corn, what we're talking about is we want to see this cash market improve. Sure, we're getting a futures rally, but we're not quite getting the cash markets weak, which is still sending a signal that we have too much corn. And there are a group of people here in America who say the USDA's numbers are way off. I could kind of start to join that party a little bit just because we had too much disease pressure in Iowa. And so we're waiting for this big, let's call it the January crop report, which, Sean, at this point, this data could be so skewed. If your big hope is that the government tells the truth in January, you may be off a little bit. So we got to go back to the old school basics of, listen, you could deliver corn within 25, 50 miles of your house. What are the cash markets telling you? Have a good relationship with your local elevators. And then you look at those carries. We have great carry in the market, but it costs money. You know, we have a Fed meeting here today in America, and we're going to lower rates a quarter, but they are still pretty much double what they were a few years ago. And so it costs money to carry grain. It costs money to put grain in a bin and then take it out. You put 100,000 bushels of corn in a bin. You don't get 100,000 bushels out. You know, stuff happens to the grain. So we want to be aware of that. So what I ask people, regardless of the carry, regardless of the futures prices, when do you need money? Because in the end, a farmer's going to make a decision and say, I'm selling grain because I need money. And I'd like my farmers to be flush with cash or have more cash than normal come Jan, Feb. So Dece, Jan, Feb, we want grain flowing. We're selling March. We're selling calls on top of March if if we're comfortable doing that. Of course, that has its own risk. But we're selling the carry. And if they don't want to make a sale, we've rallied enough that we're willing to protect this price. We've actually hit some decent prices where we took out that 4th of July high here in corn. So technically, we're turning up. I did a video this morning with my friend Carrie Artek, and the soybean chart turned up wonderfully. Technically, it looks good. The corn chart technically looks good. But you know what? 10 days ago, the feeder chart looked good technically. So every ship at the bottom of the ocean has a chart room, my friend.
I love that. And if you need, if you don't have the storage, sell the crop, buy calls into the future. Is that a strategy to participate in the upside if you believe that we're going higher?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can sell crop by calls. You can sell crop by call spread. Some people sell crop and buy futures. They're comfortable with that. We've gotten to a level in the beans where I wouldn't tell a client, hey, we've just rallied $1, sell your crop by the futures. I would say the next dollar in beans could be either way. We are fair and balanced. We can go $1 lower. We can go $1 higher. But I still believe these markets with the South American weather problem could be explosive. We did have China commit to a few cargoes, as we talked about earlier in the show, but that's silly. That's like saying we're going to buy 1/10 of 1% of our beef needs from another country. I mean, it's nothing. It's a headline, and it's a feel-good moment. So right now, government's still closed here in America. The farmer shouldn't be too mad about it. We just had one of our biggest moves in the last few years here while the government's shut. They say when the government opens, we're going to see instant money back to the farmer. What that does here in the States is the farmer should be selling, the farmer should be protecting, but when they get that government money right into Thanksgiving and Christmas, they'll shut those bin doors, and you might see a big basis pop right into a cold weather movement. You get some cold weather into Christmas, and you might see a 20-cent pop in basis. And I'm going to ask my clients, sell that hot cash market. Let's get out of what we have in hedges or protection or whatever they're working on my end, and let's cash flow. The ultimate art of the grain trading deal is the cash sale. We could trade futures, we could trade options, we could do this. Nobody gets paid until a cash sale happens, and that's how you pay back operating.
Yep. It's and if that money does go out, one of the worries that I have is we don't see those input prices that we've been so concerned about that is creating that negative margin. We don't see those input prices pull back, and that's something I'm pretty concerned about here on this 26 crop indeed. We've been talking to Tommy Grisafi. He is with Ag Bull Trading and Ag Bull Media. His website is agbull.com. Tommy, thanks a lot for joining us here to talk markets today on RealAg Radio.
Thank you, my friend.
Awesome stuff. We're going to have Tommy back more often. Today's show is brought to you by DEKALB, and we'll be right back right after this. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola. It's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am Lindsay Smith, and it is time for today's Product Spotlight. Joining me now, it's Tim Darragh. He is the Canola Technical Strategy Lead for DEKALB. Tim, it is time to talk, canola and canola performance. This is the time of year, of course, where we're sitting down, we're looking back at 2025, thinking forward to 2026, evaluating our choices, and of course, looking at what we want to do in 2026. So where do you think growers should be focusing their time and attention on this question?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're at that time of year where we do have to make some decisions about what we're going to plant next year. And one of the good tools, or one of the best tools we have available, is how products performed this past year. And so, if we look right now, there's a lot of data that's available. If you go on to the different websites for the company, dekalb.ca, as an example, you can go in and have a look at how the products performed in our trials this past year. I think one of the challenges that we do have, and when we talk with growers, is that there is kind of a pressure to get, that decision made, and there's a lot of information out there. And so, the question always comes up, what's a good trial? What makes a good trial? What kind of trial should I be looking at to actually make my decision? Because sometimes you'll get conflicting data that comes in. And, from my point of view, I get the opportunity to see all the trials. I help set the protocols and work with the team to get things together. And I mean, the big thing for me is that, you want to have trials that are local for growers. You want to have them, be able to go out and feel and touch those trials. But one of the fallacies, or one of the challenges that we have as growers trying to make a decision based on what's that one trial that was closest to me. And, at the end of the day, you can't really predict the weather or the environment you're going to have next year. And so looking at multiple sites is probably going to be one of the key things that growers need to do, and look at a couple different locations. And the more locations, the better. At the minimum, I would say look at 4 locations. But if you can look at kind of some multi-year data in your area and get that number of locations up, it's going to help you understand how our product's going to perform in different situations and different environments. And that's just going to make your decision better. When I think about our trialing program, one of the things that we pride ourselves is kind of that large plot format that growers kind of drive and do all the work on. And so when you have a plot where the growers are farming it the way that they would farm naturally or in their own system, it really allows you to see how those products are going to perform based on those different grower systems. And it gives you that indication of what it's going to look like and how it's going to be, potentially in their operation. And so those are the key things that I would say. Having a nice big plot, we tend to use like that full half mile when we're planting our strips. It just gives it more area within that field to be challenged. The other unique thing that we do is we have climate field view. So we actually go through and pull that data out and get those analysis and get that understanding. So I think those are kind of key things that are going to help growers understand the products going into the, that they've got to choose from. And hopefully from that, they can, get in touch with one of those local representatives, whether it's a sales rep at your retail or one of the DEKALB agronomists we have in the field. They really get a chance to understand those products and get those insights. And having that conversation will help, make you have a better choice.
To that end, how then do the reps and DEKALB really help growers make the final hybrid decision? Because of course, there is a lot to sort of sift through and a lot of that data. What does that decision sort of process look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from a DEKALB agronomist point of view, they really do spend a lot of time out in the field looking at these products and getting to understand them. And I think, one of the things we don't shy away from when we're looking at data or looking at trials is, there's wins and losses, and we talk about them all because there's you learn as much from a loss as you do a win. And, they really get to understand where those products are supposed to be grown and where they're going to fit. And, they really get in and get their hands dirty and get that understanding. So, having that conversation with them, they're going to be able to talk to you about your farm and what kind of, situations and what kind of challenges you have, and be able to help, guide you in that choice in terms of finding that right product. In terms of, low touch opportunities, and, obviously we're getting close to that deadline where you want to make that decision. We've actually leaned into AI just a little bit, and we've got a tool, on our website, where, it allows growers to go through and kind of input some of the challenges that they have, what kind of information that they want to have, and helps them, or guides them towards a selection. So that's DEKALBseedselector.ca. It's a pretty fun little tool if you get a bit of time to go in there and play around with it. It's a good way to kind of understand what kind of products there are and what's going to fit for your area.
Now, lastly, of course, the final decision incorporates a whole bunch of different things, as you mentioned, maybe, identifying your key challenges for different fields. What goes into, what sort of does that list look like that farmers should consider when making the best hybrid decision for their farm?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're doing this to make money. It's profitability. And so yield helps drive that. That's an important part of the decision. And one of the things that I think we can get lost and get too focused on yield, but it's oftentimes we need to understand that whole operation in terms of what your needs are. And so, when I think about DEKALB, we've got the different disease packages, whether it's clubroot resistance, clubroot plus, blackleg. One of the nice things with DEKALB is that's all disclosed on our hybrids, and we're all upfront on that. But it's also, how does that fit on your farm, and what does it look like for harvest management? And so maturity plays into that, and we've got some great early products that help allow guys get in the field a little bit quicker. And the other thing that we have is that whole plant dry down, and we talk about it and we talk with growers a fair bit about it, but when that plant dries down completely, it just allows for that easier harvest. They can get through their machine. And I'd recommend, if growers get the opportunity to, if they really want to understand products, talk to our representatives, see if there's a chance to get a trial. We like to work with different growers throughout Western Canada. It's a great way to experience those products and get a hands-on exposure. But, the one thing that, is always kind of resonates with me is when we have a new cooperator and they get a chance to combine DEKALB for the first time, and they realize what the advantage is on that whole plant dry down, how much easier that is, how much less fuel you're using, how fast they're going. It's a really important piece of the puzzle, and really helps them understand, what we're talking about, trying to find a product that's going to work for all growers.
All right, Tim, there is, of course, we are getting to the deadline, but we'd be remiss if we didn't note there are some savings available for growers. What do they need to know there?
Yeah, and so, right now we're getting towards the end of our window here for harvest rewards. That's wrapping up on the 31st of October here, so that deadline is coming quick. They do have the opportunity to save up to $75 a bag on canola when they, book their canola by the 31st of October. And so I would highly recommend, if you want to take advantage of that and maximize that profitability next year, reach out to your local retail, have a conversation about booking DEKALB as soon as possible.
Okay, Tim, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Ever hear that good things come to those who wait? Well, we think it's more like great rewards come to those who book their Invigor hybrid canola early. Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower Program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all your Invigor needs by November 14th. Speak with your local retailer about eligible hybrids. Terms and conditions apply. Book early. Come out ahead.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by DEKALB. We're now going to talk about what's going on south of the border in the United States. We're joined right now by Representative Eric Sorensen, who is the representative for the 17th District in Illinois. Representative Sorensen, it's great to have you on the show.
It's good to be with you, Sean. And speaking of DEKALB, I went to college at Northern Illinois University, and I had the flying corn on my wall, and I still have it in my office here today.
Yeah, when I saw who today's show sponsor was and that you were joining us, I was wondering if there would be a strong connection there. So, in the 17th district, you're representing Rockford, Quad Cities, Peoria, which obviously that's where there's a big cat factory in right. Peoria. So you've got some agriculture in your district.
Yeah. In fact, right here, the hometown where I live is also the hometown of a guy named John Deere.
Yeah.
And Deere and Company has been a part of our DNA here in Western Illinois since 1832. When he decided in order to build the plow that he invented, he needed to move along the Mississippi River and be able to have the mills on the water to be able to create the power necessary. And it's still here today. And so, that's kind of one of the foundations for when I got to Congress, why I needed to be on the House Agriculture Committee, because this is such an important, not just part of our DNA, but it really drives the economy of this part of Illinois. We're far removed from the city of Chicago, but I like to say sometimes we're in eastern Iowa, and it's a different place here.
Well, longtime Chicago Bears fan right here, so go Bears.
All right.
Hey, let's talk about the impact of the government shutdown on agriculture. It has obviously shown itself in areas like with flight travel, which is outside of agriculture, but there's got to be some impacts inside of agriculture as well.
Yeah, thankfully, one thing that we look at is crop insurance. It's not impacted. But across the board, farmers are feeling the effects of this shutdown. Farmers aren't able to enroll in, farm bill conservation programs. Those things are so important here for our producers. FSA loans, they stopped without government funding. And so a prolonged government shutdown will have bigger impacts in the ag sector. We talk about SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Food Program. That here, November 1st, we've never been in a situation where this country has not been able to help people who need food assistance, and that comes through the United States Department of Agriculture. Looking at how those things are moving forward, it really means that we need to get back to the work of the people and making sure that the federal government of the United States is working for the people and not just the few at the top.
Is there anything the House Ag Committee can do in the short term to try to, make sure that some of those FSA offices are able to operate, or just to try to bridge the gap, so to speak, until this shutdown ends?
Yeah, Sean, I think that's a great question. And one of the problems that we have, a lot of what was in our 5-year farm bill, of course, that's 7 years now, right? The 5-year farm bill, a lot of the pieces that came out of that went into the big ugly bill, right? There's still a lot that is left, and there's a lot concerning, conservation and broadband access for our farmers, so that they can connect with precision agriculture. These things are so important. So we like to say, the skinny farm bill. Can we get that skinny farm bill across the finish line? But the problem today, Sean, is that it's not so much that the door to the committee room in House Ag is closed. It's that Speaker Mike Johnson has locked it. I don't have a key to open it up. The problem that we have today is really we have a rogue administration that is deciding to unlawfully, refuse contingency funds to help food aid, right? We already see that China hasn't bought any soybeans from the United States. And now the president wants to bail out Argentina for whatever reason. We need to get to work in House Ag. And the problem is today, I can't get that work done. And when I talk with the farmers and I talk with our producers here in Western Illinois, they're feeling it. And I'll tell you what, more and more of these farmers which tend to lean conservative, they're getting really mad. They're getting mad that the people that have supported for years and years and years, those on the Republican side, aren't doing the job that they need them to do. And that's where we are at a precipice for where we go next. Are we going to be able to do the work for the people, or is this just going to be a political game that President Donald Trump wants to continue to play? They take pride in their work. I'm talking about farmers. They prefer markets over a bailout or assistance. But these producers understand today that the pressures they're facing are beyond their own control.
Yeah, right now, to me, it looks like both sides just kind of refuse to budge. We're at a real where our feet are in concrete on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, the Republicans are saying, we won't negotiate on those Obamacare premiums until the government's back, and your side of the aisle is saying, I don't think so, and so somebody's got to budge here.
Yeah, and so Sean, I like to be able to take this down to the most granular level, right? So I go back to my sixth grade, learning how government works from Mrs. Ralston, St. Edward's School, Rockford, Illinois. Okay, in the House of Representatives, we need a simple majority to pass things to the Senate. Republicans have control, so my no vote, wasn't able to stop this in the House, so it passed the House. Okay, it went to the Senate. And we need 60 votes out of the 100. It's not a simple majority. Everybody knows it takes 60 votes in the Senate. The Republicans today have 53. They need 7 votes. So they have known all along, Republicans have known all along, they need 7 extra votes. So in order to get that for anything, there's always a negotiation. There are negotiations that go on for everything. Every bill that gets passed, there are negotiations where either you meet in the middle or there's a give and a take. The problem is the Republicans in the Senate have gone home. They have said, nope, we're not going to do anything. It's my way or the highway. And Democrats are saying, we're not going to allow you to cut health care for tens of millions of Americans. We can't vote yes on that. It's on our conscience that we're not going to allow that to happen. So come negotiate with us. Let's find a good faith way of moving forward. And then in turn, let's open up the government too. And so I don't know how this impasse moves forward. That's the hard part for me. Right?
Yeah,
because now I'm seeing people in my communities, Sean, who are now suffering. And especially going into next week without food assistance, this political game that is being played in Washington is going to have a real effect, not just on our economy, but on real mothers and fathers trying to put food on their table, and especially as we look ahead to Thanksgiving.
There is a long-awaited meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China. There was Reuters had a story this morning that China has bought 3 cargoes of soybeans, which is really the first in this purchasing window. As a member of the House Ag Committee and obviously member of Congress, what would you like to see as an outcome this week? What needs to happen between the U.S. and China?
Look, I think there needs to be a negotiation. I mean, but we look back to 2016. Okay, in 2016, the first Trump presidency, you saw what they were willing to do to risk our relationship with China. And then what China has done in the interim is they have created the relationships with Argentina and Brazil so that they didn't need the United States as exports anymore. And that was a problem, because if we lose that relationship, that trading partner with China, we're going to have to find it in some place else. And so I have always been about opening up markets, for everyone in North America to be able to trade with Africa and Asia and South America, to be able to do what we need to do so that our GDP in North America can go up. And so it's not just hoping that something happens. I sent a letter to President Trump with the Illinois delegation, just this week, asking him to end the reckless trade war that is crushing our ag economy. When people think of Illinois, they immediately think of Chicago. But our number one economy in the state of Illinois, it's agriculture.
Yeah. And we mentioned John Deere and Cat earlier. It makes me think of this, tariffs on things like steel, which would be having a major impact. John Deere alone is talking about having to pay in this fiscal year about $500 million in tariff funds. What needs to happen there? Are you hearing from those companies and the impact it's having on their businesses?
So not only am I hearing from Caterpillar, which has a huge presence in Peoria, Illinois, I'm hearing that from John Deere and Deere and Company, which is headquartered in Moline. But then also, as I talk with you, I am less than 1 mile from the Mississippi River. Across the Mississippi River is Arconic, and Arconic has the largest aluminum press in the world. And that is, as the crow flies, maybe 2 miles from where I sit. A lot of the aluminum that they will press there into, whether it is Ford trucks or whether it is parts of a John Deere implement, a majority of the aluminum that is pressed here comes from Canada. And they have told me that the contracts that they have with those big companies were decided years ago. And now, if that commodity that is being imported to the United States from Canada is now exorbitantly priced because we're tariffing ourselves, it means that our own economy is going to take a hit. And so we have to make sure that our trading partners understand that this is a give and take. I talk with folks, up into the Dakotas and Minnesota, that are raising sows in Manitoba and Alberta, right? And then those sows come across the border. They're subject to a tariff. All right. Then they're raised and they go to a pork processing. Then they go back across the border and they get tariffed again. And then when the bacon comes to the United States, it gets tariffed again. These trade wars don't work for the consumer, because the consumers, real people, pay the price.
Representative Sorensen, before we wrap up, I'm curious if we do start to see China pick up their buying of U.S. soybeans, as an example, along with other commodities, but soybeans are getting the attention. Does there still need to be an assistance package to farmers while we wait for that big, beautiful bill to kick in?
I don't think that, just getting soybeans back is going to make our ag sector whole. And I've said this from the very beginning. We're going to need to rethink agriculture, right? We're going to need to rethink how we do what we do. Not only are we raising, food that is feeding the world, but we're also growing our homegrown energy. And so we're going to need some assistance for our farmers, because when you look at the cost of new implements and you look at the cost of inputs, which are going sky high when we talk about seed prices and pesticides and fertilizers, we're going to need a bridge. And a lot of that is due to Trump's executive orders. And our producers here in the Midwest, they prefer good markets. They want good policy. They don't want to bail out. And I think, if we're able to do the things that we can, expedite down the Mississippi rivers to get our products to market, diversifying markets, these are all keys for agriculture. But we have to make sure that we don't just do what is in our headlights. We have to understand on the road map where we're going.
We have been talking to Representative Eric Sorensen. He represents the 17th District in Illinois. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us here today on RealAg Radio. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, brought to you today by DEKALB.
The future of phosphorus fertilizers is Risazorb. Craig Dick, VP of Sales and Marketing for Phospholutions, explains.
Risazorb 8390 is a next-generation dry phosphate fertilizer that replaces MAP or DAP. Risazorb technology is incorporated into traditional phosphate manufacturing, resulting in a finished granule that enhances phosphorus uptake, reduces phosphorus use rates, and maintains crop yields.
Preserve yield, optimize phosphorus, and reduce costs with Risazorb.
I'm Lindsay Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, brought to you today by DEKALB. Make sure you check out DEKALBrewards.ca and save some money here on your 2026 seed purchase. Okay, recently the University of Guelph made an announcement that the Tom and Jane Funk Bursary was being created. Joining us right now is the Dean of the Ontario Ag College at the University of Guelph. It is Dr. John Cranfield.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Well, this is a cool one because the Funk family is a very close personal friend of mine. I know you've known the family for quite some time. Let's talk about the recent announcement you have around this bursary.
Yeah, well, we're really excited to announce that Tom and Jane Funk have created a needs-based bursary for students studying agri-marketing, and in particular students in our food and agricultural business program. Tom and Jane were longtime faculty members here at the University of Guelph, starting with Tom in 1971, and then going on for more than 30 years. And you know, they touched on the lives of a lot of people and many generations, myself included. I was a student in Tom's marketing management course, which if you took 02437 at the University of Guelph, you know that course very well. And of course, Jane made her own mark with her work on professional selling. And, you know, two wonderful people who did so much for the institution. And now it's just such a pleasure to see them being able to give back and help support that next generation.
Yeah, you know, and it's so funny. You go to an event, and you know, I've been doing lots of work with their son Justin on our Real Agri studies and some of our market research we do together, and it's been awesome. And I was actually able to going back a couple of years ago, had lunch with Tom and really enjoyed that. They've had such an impact. You go to an industry event, and because people know I'm associated with Justin, they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I was in Tom and Jane's class." Like, it is just amazing how many people they, in some way or fashion, touched so many people who are working in today's industry.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And you know, I can't turn around without finding someone who talks about them or thinks about them. And you know, whether it's the feed industry, whether it's the chemical input industry, whether it's getting into the food manufacturing sector. I mean, they've touched on so many people. And you know, a good example of that in terms of the lasting legacy that they've left, and in particular, Tom, is our CAMA team here at Guelph. He was the instigator of that, and that team has come on to actually be a bit of a how do I want to say this, farm system for ag marketing businesses and agencies, because it's such a rich experience for those students. And you know, we owe Tom a great gratitude for having the wisdom and insight to get that up off the ground. And you know, we're now, gosh, I think over 25 years of CAMA teams here at Guelph who've done well down at the NAMA competition. And so, you know, those people are now on their way in professional careers. And so it's exciting to see what impact that they have in that regard. And, you know, this is, I think, a great opportunity for us to come together as an industry and as an organization and organizations, and you know, maybe have a chance for people to give back to Tom and Jane by making a donation to their scholarship or to their bursary, beg your pardon. And, you know, we do have an active campaign right now for those people who feel like Tom and Jane and Justin have made an impact on their lives and their careers to bolster their $50,000 gift to something bigger than that, to continue supporting not only the students with those needs-based assessment, but other opportunities as well.
So it's for somebody that's pursuing education in agribusiness.
Yep.
So I guess talk a little bit about that in terms of some of the qualifications.
Well, I mean, qualifications in the ag business program or for the scholarship?
Just either or, yeah.
Yeah, well, for the scholarship or the bursary, it's a needs-based award, so you have to have demonstrated financial need and be eligible for provincial assistance, but you also have to be in the food and agricultural business major in our Bachelor of Commerce, which is a program here in OAC. And then there's also going to be some grades assessment. You've got to have a minimum level of a grade, but really the focus is on the need base and making sure that you know, students who maybe don't have the financial resources to succeed in college or university now have that lesson a bit, because maybe they don't have to go and work a second job or even a job because the scholarship is helping to support them and what they're trying to do. So it's really about trying to make that journey for those students a little bit easier, and allow them to have the same success that so many other people have had alongside Tom and Jane.
Well, it also helps in dropping some of the, if the financial part of it is a barrier, it's great because we talk all the time in this industry, but we need to attract more and more people into it, right?
Yeah.
Let's get rid of the barriers. And if this is one of them, this is serving that purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we know here in Ontario, and I'm sure the number is very similar across the country, and the number is now getting a little bit dated that for every graduate from OAC, there are 4 jobs. And certainly our ag business graduates are in high demand from all sorts of parts of the sector, whether it's the financial services sector, the animal agriculture sector, the feed industry, cropping inputs. We know there's demand for graduates. And so making sure that we've got accessible education and affordable education is really important. And this is one step towards making that happen.
And you mentioned this already, but if you feel strongly about, this stream of education and maybe you took a class from Jane or Tom or, the Funk family in general, there's a great opportunity for people to contribute and participate and really kind of leverage this and get it going.
That's right. Tom and Jane have provided the seed funding, and it's going to be an amazing bursary to hand out and to see those students thrive. But we know that we can do more. And we know that there's a lot of people who feel the connection back to the work that Tom and Jane did. And, we hope that they see this as an opportunity, as a way to say thank you back to Tom and Jane. And again, they emphasize this in the press release. Let's support that next generation. And, if we're not doing that at a university, we're not doing our job. This is always about what's that next generation and creating the opportunity for them to grow, thrive, and survive.
Yeah. What is it? Pay it forward, right?
Pay it forward. Pay it forward.
That is right. Okay. If somebody is interested in the bursary or maybe finding, ways to financially support it, how do they do so?
Well, what I'll do is I'll drop you a note with a link to the webpage that if someone wanted to give, and then maybe we can include that in some show notes.
Absolutely. That sounds good. Hey, John, thanks so much for joining us here today. Well, hey, but before I let you go, anything else exciting happening at the University of Guelph right now at OAC?
Well, at the University of Guelph, we had this small, exciting thing where our former dean, Rennie Van Acker, was formally installed as president of the University of Guelph. And so, we were all just so excited that Rennie was named president. Now to actually see that formality happen, it's an exciting time here at Guelph. Like all universities, we're facing some challenges, but we've got strong leadership at the helm, and we know that he's going to have a vision that helps us chart our way. And I'm still kind of new on the job too, so it's also exciting for me to be the dean of OAC and have my former boss now the president of the university. That it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely great stuff. Hey, John, thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks to Dr. John Cranfield for joining us here. And of course, if you are interested in supporting that Funk Bursary, you will have the link on the story on RealAgriculture.com. Please check that out. And if you need it, just send me an email and I'll send it over to you. Hey, with your canola in the bin, it's time to lock up savings for next year's season. Act now and save up to $75 per bag on DEKALB canola with Harvest Rewards, but only until October 31st. That is this Friday. That's everybody. That's in 2 days. Visit DEKALBrewards.ca for details. If you have any feedback on today's show, we covered a lot of ground here. We got markets, we got policy, we talked about the Funk Bursary. Would love your feedback. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can always call that RealAg feedback line. You can also text it 855-776-6147. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Big shout out for today's show sponsor, DEKALB. And we'll talk again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody. And welcome to the bonus here on RealAg Radio. Thanks for downloading the RealAg Radio podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And there is lots of news to cover, but we should really start off with how good are those Toronto Blue Jays? We got a series tied 2-2. Hope everyone's been enjoying it. I know all of my phone calls throughout the week, it has all been about the Blue Jays. It is not about the weather or what's going on with Harvest. It's all about the Blue Jays. Series tied 2-2. We're close, everybody. We are close, but we are still... we're a long ways away. We still got to win 2 of 3, which is going to be tough, but, boy, it has been fantastic. And, after that 18-inning game, you had to wonder if they would come out and fight in game 4, and they very much did that. It was great to see Vlad hit that home run of Shohei Ohtani. Okay, let's get to the news. And off the top, U.S. President Donald Trump may have said he wasn't in South Korea to see Canada's prime minister, but it's actually interesting. The two ended up sitting across from each other at a small dinner Wednesday night during the APEC summit in South Korea. Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney exchanged smiles and pleasantries, their first words since Trump cut off trade talks last week and threatened a new 10% tariff on Canadian imports over an Ontario ad criticizing his tariffs. While Trump downplayed chances of a formal meeting, Carney is turning elsewhere. He's set to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday. That's significant for Canadian farmers, of course, as everybody knows. China has slapped tariffs on canola peas, pork, and seafood. And don't forget about the fact we still have issues in terms of Canadian beef getting into China as well. Trump's tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos, softwood lumber continue to weigh heavily on Canadian industry, leaving trade tensions high on both sides of the Pacific. And I have a request. I'm really hoping, Premier Ford is again today, he's back out making comments about all this. Let's maybe tone it down, Premier Ford. It would really probably help some of these relationships. The Bank of Canada has lowered its key interest rate by a quarter point to 2.25%, the second cut in a row and the fourth this year. But Governor Tiff Macklem says this may be the last cut for some time, as the economy struggles under the weight of U.S. tariffs. And that's a little bit different than the Federal Reserve, which we'll get to in a second. But the Bank of Canada sounds like they are going to pause. The central bank says President Trump's trade measures on steel, aluminum, autos, and other goods are leaving lasting scars, shrinking Canada's GDP by an estimated 1.5% for next year. Exports to the U.S. have dropped sharply, and many companies have frozen investment and hiring. While inflation is easing back towards the 2% target, Macklem warned that monetary policy cannot undo the damage caused by tariffs. He signaled that Ottawa will need to lean more on fiscal policy. Prime Minister Mark Carney's first budget, due next week, is expected to feature major deficit spending on infrastructure, housing, and defense. We'll see how far that budget goes when it comes to austerity. I read a piece this morning on Substack where the author talked about how he believes the budget's going to fail and we are headed to an election again in Canada, which I'm not sure the timing is really good for that. We got a lot of problems to sort out. Being distracted by elections are fun, and I like to talk about them and cover them, and I'm a political junkie like the rest of you. But I'm not sure the timing is really good for Canada right now if we were to have an election, but you can send me your thoughts on that. That's the Bank of Canada, what they had to say about the economics. But what about the Fed? So the U.S. Federal Reserve has lowered interest rates by another quarter point, bringing its benchmark down to a range of 3.75 to 4%. So remember that Canadian rate is at 2.25, and now we've got the U.S. rate at 3.75. So rates higher in the U.S. Bank of Canada has been cutting. The Federal Reserve really has not. This is the lowest rate in the U.S. in 3 years. It's the second cut in a row aimed at preventing a slowdown in hiring from turning into something worse. But Fed Chair Jerome Powell says it's far from certain the central bank will cut again in December, pushing back against market expectations. Powell says policymakers are divided, and the government shutdown has created a data blackout, making it harder to gauge the economy. The Fed also announced it will stop shrinking the $6.6 trillion balance sheet in December, ending a years-long effort to unwind pandemic stimulus. Inflation remains just under 3%, above the Fed's 2% target, while job growth has cooled sharply. There's been a number of different job cutback announcements here this week alone. And we talked about this in the interview earlier in the show with Tommy Grisafi from Ag Bull Media. China has booked its first known purchases of U.S. soybeans this marketing year. Bloomberg reports at least 2 cargoes were bought, while Reuters says state-owned COFCO purchased 3 cargoes, about 180,000 metric tons for December and January shipment through Pacific Northwest ports. The sales come just before President Trump and President Xi are set to meet in South Korea to finalize a trade deal that could roll back tariffs and ease restrictions. Analysts say the move may mark the start of renewed Chinese buying, though Beijing is still focused on diversifying supply and reducing long-term reliance on U.S. soybeans. For U.S. farmers, the purchase offers a welcome signal of demand at a time when heavy inventories have weighed on prices. Some analysts, and Tommy was kind of in this camp, I don't want to put words in his mouth, they're kind of poo-pooing the volume, saying 3 cargoes, so what? Show me more. But is this the start or is this the end? Time is going to tell. Interesting that I think President Trump and President Xi Jinping are meeting on Thursday. Well, Carney's meeting with President Xi Jinping on Friday. So President of China, very busy this week. The Canadian Crop Hail Association says 2025 was an average claims year, with overall claim numbers down slightly from last season, but there's still plenty of challenges out there for prairie farmers. Early drought conditions gave way to timely rains, boosting yields beyond expectations, though harvest wrapped up about 10% later than average. Severe storms hit parts of Saskatchewan and across the prairies with golf ball size hail, causing millions in losses. Commodity prices struggled, reducing insured acres and payouts per acre. Still, insurers say they work quickly to process a high volume of claims and keep harvest disruptions to a minimum. Bern Tobin from the RealAg team was at the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity meeting yesterday in Toronto. They had some new research they released, and it shows that public trust in Canada's food system has climbed to a 5-year high. Nearly 45% of Canadians now believe the system is headed in the right direction. That's up 14 points from last year. The boost is tied to a wave of pro-Canada sentiment, fueled by global trade tensions and political uncertainty. Farmers and scientists remain the most trusted voices in food, with transparency ratings above 40%. But researchers caution the optimism is very fragile. Food costs remain Canadians' top concern, even as worries have eased slightly. The Centre for Food Integrity says turning this moment into lasting momentum will require ongoing collaboration, transparency, and communication across the food sector. Pretty much dropped every keyword we possibly could into that one. Mexico's agriculture minister says progress is being made on reopening the U.S. border to Mexican cattle, but no target date has been set. This is one of the elements of that perfect storm we've been looking at in the cattle market, where obviously demand has been strong, supply has been short, and the fact that the border in the U.S. has been closed to Mexican cattle because of screwworm has even restricted supply of those feeder animals even more. After a virtual meeting with U.S. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins, the Mexican ag minister said both governments are focused on controlling New World screwworm, a key condition for resuming trade. Mexico is testing new mobile plants that could produce up to 20 million sterile flies per week and working to bring a larger facility in Mexico online that will generate 100 million flies weekly. 100 million flies weekly. The Mexican ag minister stressed the border won't reopen until that extra capacity is in place to ensure animal health safeguards. The long-delayed resumption of cattle exports remains dependent on proving Mexico can fully contain the pest. President Trump's proposal to quadruple beef imports from Argentina has sparked rare bipartisan backlash in Washington. The plan would expand import quotas to 80,000 tons of mostly lean trimmings, which the White House says will help ease food inflation. There's very little bipartisan support of anything in D.C. It is fascinating to see that President Trump has got people reaching across the aisle when it comes to beef, but here we are in the back end of 2025. Cattle state Republicans and Senate Democrats argue the move undermines U.S. ranchers already squeezed by drought and high feed costs. Senator Steve Daines of Montana said rancher concerns have been delivered loud and clear, while Senator Mike Rounds, who I believe is in South Dakota, warned the plan would hurt domestic producers. House Ways and Means Chair Jason Smith added that expanded imports would do little to lower grocery bills, but could further squeeze ranchers. Meanwhile, Democrats led by Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota and Elizabeth Warren are also challenging a proposed $20 billion U.S. aid package to Argentina, saying it prioritizes foreign nations over American farmers. Industry groups, including the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, are joining the opposition, while USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins defended the plan as a way to boost competition among packers. I'm very fascinated as if we do see live cattle, which was up strongly today, but if we do see live cattle and feeder cattle go lower, but the box beef price goes higher, that'd be a scenario where all that's happened here is it's actually helped packer margins and been worse for actual producer margins, which would definitely be an outcome that would be very, very hard to defend at the White House. Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates is changing his tone on climate change, I should say. Once known for dire warnings of climate catastrophe, Gates now says global warming will not spell humanity's end. He was pretty passionate about this topic. If I remember right, he actually wrote a book on climate change. In a blog post, Gates wrote that while climate change will bring serious challenges, especially for the poorest nations, people will be able to live and thrive in most places on Earth for the foreseeable future. Whew, is that a relief? The remarks mark a sharp shift from his 2021 book To Avoid a Climate Disaster, which warned that climate change could be worse than the COVID-19 pandemic. Gates Foundation has invested billions in carbon-cutting technologies. He also acknowledges criticism of his private jet travel, I should say so, saying he offsets emissions through carbon credits. Mr. Gates is also the largest private farmland owner in the United States as well. And finally, a story that really doesn't have much to do with ag, but it has to do with banking, which agriculture obviously sees as a very important stakeholder. But OpenAI is quietly running a project called Mercury that could shake up investment banking. According to Bloomberg, the company has hired more than 100 former bankers from firms like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs to help train its AI on how to build financial models. The contractors are paid $150 an hour to write prompts and create Excel models for deals like IPOs and restructurings. The goal, replace the long hours of grunt work usually done by junior bankers. Analysts often spend 80 plus hours a week adjusting spreadsheets and slide decks. OpenAI wants its technology to take over those repetitive kinds of tasks, saying banks time and money, though it's raising fresh concerns about job security for entry-level staff. Yep. If we don't have any junior bankers, where do the senior bankers of the future come from? It's a question about all this AI stuff that I often do wonder. But there's upside here, obviously, if the bank is able to become more efficient. Maybe that helps with some of the lending costs that some like a farmer would face. But at the same time, if a lot of the decisions on go or no go on loans and, working with the bank, if that's all being decided by AI, it's really hard to have a relationship with your banker. You have a relationship with a computer, which is probably not going to be friendly to somebody like the farmer if this was applied in agricultural lending. So this is something to definitely follow. If you have any feedback on the news or anything we discussed on today's show, I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. And thanks everybody for downloading the Real Ag Radio podcast. Continue to tell your friends, your neighbors, your peers, family, whoever, about Real Ag Radio and the Real Ag Radio podcast. We really do appreciate it. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.